There's undoubtedly a time, they found fossils on Antarctica, there's undoubtedly a time when Antarctica was lush and green. So 6 million years ago, Antarctica is supposed to have been as cold and as frozen as it is today.
Have you ever stopped to wonder what's really hiding beneath Antarctica's icy surface? We're not just talking about penguins and glaciers here. According to best-selling author and independent researcher Graham Hancock, Antarctica might hold a shocking secret, one that could completely change the way we see human history.
The Homo sapiens line descends from a line that goes back about 6 million years, not much further than that, if we accept conventional evolutionary theory, is the issue of a global cataclysm at the end of the Ice Age. What caused that cataclysm is a secondary issue. The cataclysm itself is the primary issue. And I found the Younger Dryas impact hypothesis a better, much more scientifically grounded explanation for that cataclysm.
Hancock believes that hidden beneath miles of ice are clues to a lost, highly advanced civilization that vanished after a catastrophic global disaster thousands of years ago. But before we jump into these intriguing possibilities, let's take a moment to talk about Graham Hancock himself. Graham Hancock isn't your typical historian or archaeologist. He began his career as a journalist reporting on conflicts and current affairs for major British publications. But his path took a sharp turn towards the enigmatic corners of the past. He became fascinated by ancient mysteries, by the structures and legends that seemed to hint at possibilities far beyond the accepted narratives taught in schools. Hancock positions himself not as an academic bound by disciplinary constraints, but as an independent investigator following clues wherever they might lead, even if it means confronting established scientific and historical paradigms. His work, presented through numerous best-selling books like Fingerprints of the Gods and Magicians of the Gods, and more recently through popular Netflix series, consistently argues for the existence of a highly advanced, globally connected civilization that flourished during the last ice age. He suggests this civilization possessed sophisticated knowledge of astronomy, engineering, and potentially cartography, far beyond what mainstream history credits to our ancestors of that period. Hancock's central thesis often revolves around the idea that this civilization was wiped out by a cataclysmic event, leaving behind only fragmented evidence and myths passed down through surviving cultures. He is undeniably controversial, often criticized by mainstream academia for his interpretations of evidence and reliance on speculative connections. Yet his persistence and ability to weave compelling narratives have captivated a massive global audience, forcing many to question, could there be more to our prehistory than we've been told? His focus frequently returns to Antarctica, viewing it not just as a frozen wasteland, but potentially as a crucial piece of this prehistoric puzzle. Antarctica. The name alone conjures images of blinding white landscapes, howling winds, and temperatures so low they defy comprehension. It's the coldest, driest, windiest, and highest continent on Earth, a place of extremes where life clings precariously to the fringes. Covering an area larger than the United States and Mexico combined, roughly 98% of it is buried beneath a colossal ice sheet, averaging over a mile thick and reaching nearly 3 miles deep in places. This immense icy mantle holds about 70% of the world's fresh water, a frozen reservoir shaping global climate and sea levels. Humanity's official discovery of Antarctica is relatively recent, occurring only in the early 19th century. Explorers like von Bellingshausen, Bransfield, and Palmer first sighted the mainland around 1820, followed by arduous expeditions into the interior by figures like Amundsen and Scott in the early 20th century. For most of recorded history, it was Terra Australis Incognita, the unknown southern land, a hypothetical continent believed to exist purely to balance the land masses of the northern hemisphere. Yet this modern timeline stands in stark contrast to intriguing hints and anomalies that Hancock and others point to. Could ancient mariners have known of its existence long before the 19th century? Could the continent itself have looked vastly different in the distant past, perhaps even supporting life, forests, and maybe even civilization before the ice claimed it? This is the frozen enigma, a continent largely unexplored beneath its icy veil, holding secrets locked away for millennia. Its sheer remoteness and the crushing weight of the ice make archaeological investigation incredibly difficult, leaving ample room for speculation about what might lie hidden, waiting to be uncovered. Maps of a forgotten age.
Our civilization did not discover Antarctica until 1820. We had no idea. And there are other maps. Could you find the Pinkerton world map from 1813, say, or 18... There, that's how Antarctica is shown on a map.
Non-existent.
It isn't there.
Right.
And that's because it's an honest map.
That's 1818.
Yeah, 1818.
And you said that's because it's an honest map?
It's an honest map because at that time, navigators from our civilization hadn't found Antarctica. A few years later, 1820, Antarctica is discovered and it starts to appear on maps. But the anomaly is that it appears on these much earlier maps as well.
One of the cornerstones of Graham Hancock's argument for a lost advanced prehistoric civilization with knowledge of Antarctica centers on a collection of enigmatic ancient maps. Perhaps the most famous of these is the Piri Reis map compiled in Constantinople in 1513 by the Ottoman admiral and cartographer Piri Reis. What makes this map so astonishing according to proponents of ancient Antarctic knowledge is its apparent depiction of the northern coastline of Antarctica, specifically Queen Maud Land. The controversy lies in the fact that this coastline is shown free of ice, something not witnessed in recorded human history until modern seismic surveys mapped the subglacial topography in the mid-20th century. How could Piri Reis, who explicitly stated he compiled his map
20 source maps, and that some of these maps went back to the time of Alexander the Great, or even earlier, in other words, to before the time of Christ.
From much older source maps, some allegedly dating back to the time of Alexander the Great or even earlier, accurately chart a landmass supposedly unknown until 300 years later and depict it without its ice cap, which has been present for thousands, if not millions, of years. Hancock suggests this map and others like the Orontius Phineus map of 1531, which appears to show the entire continent, rivers and coastline beneath the ice, or the Mercator maps of the 16th century, which also hint at Antarctic landmasses, are not products of 16th century exploration but rather copies or fragments of far older source maps. These sources, he argues, must have originated from a sophisticated maritime civilization that existed during a time when parts of Antarctica were ice-free, likely before the end of the last ice age. This civilization, he posits, possessed the technology and knowledge to accurately map the globe, including the southern continent's true shape. Mainstream explanations often counter that these depictions are either coincidental resemblances, interpretations of discovered lands further north misidentified as Antarctica, or perhaps based on theoretical geographical concepts of a southern balancing continent rather than actual surveys. However, for Hancock and his supporters, the apparent accuracy of these subglacial features on maps centuries ahead of their time remains compelling evidence pointing towards a forgotten chapter of human or pre-human history intricately linked to a dramatically different Antarctic past. The Great Cataclysm Theory. Central to Graham Hancock's entire framework is the theory of a devastating global cataclysm that occurred towards the end of the last ice age, dramatically altering the face of the planet and wiping out the advanced civilization he proposes.
Is the issue of a global cataclysm at the end of the ice age. What caused that cataclysm is a secondary issue. The cataclysm itself is the primary issue. And I found the Younger Dryas impact hypothesis a better, much more scientifically grounded explanation for that cataclysm than the notion of Earth crust displacement.
He often points specifically to the Younger Dryas period, a geological epoch marked by a sudden and intense return to glacial conditions that began roughly 12,800 years ago, interrupting the warming trend following the last glacial maximum. Hancock, aligning with the controversial Younger Dryas impact hypothesis, suggests this period wasn't just a climate shift, but was triggered by a cataclysmic event, likely multiple fragments of a disintegrating comet impacting Earth, hitting the North American ice sheets and potentially other locations.
A significant sea level rise 12,800 years ago at exactly the moment of this deep freeze. The comet impact hypothesis explains that because it says that the shock and the heat of the impact of large fragments of a comet on the North American and European ice caps would have been sufficient to release that freezing water into the world ocean, to cut the Gulf Stream.
The proposed consequences were biblical in scale. Colossal floods from melting ice dams, like the draining of glacial Lake Agassiz, widespread wildfires ignited by atmospheric re-entry and impacts, abrupt sea level rise drowning coastal regions, darkened skies leading to a cosmic winter, and mass extinctions of megafauna like the mammoth and saber-toothed cat.
12,800 years ago, in the 1,000 or 1,200 years after that, that's a window when all the great Ice Age megafauna go extinct. That's
Megafauna are...
saber-toothed tigers,
Right.
woolly mammoths, mastodons,
Right.
giant sloths. The whole collection
Yep.
of famous Ice Age megafauna, they all go extinct in that window.
Hancock argues that this global upheaval provides the mechanism not only for the destruction of his proposed lost civilization, but also for the sudden and dramatic climate changes that could have rapidly advanced glaciation across Antarctica, burying any evidence of prior habitation under miles of ice. He posits that this civilization, potentially based in part on and then temperate Antarctica, saw its world literally torn apart and frozen over in a geological instant. Furthermore, Hancock connects this cataclysmic hypothesis to the prevalence of flood myths found in cultures across the globe, from Noah's Ark to the Epic of Gilgamesh, Manu in Hindu tradition, and countless others. He sees these not merely as allegorical tales, but as fragmented, distorted memories of a genuine worldwide catastrophe passed down by the traumatized survivors who inherited a radically changed Earth. This cataclysm theory forms the narrative spine connecting ancient maps, alleged Antarctic anomalies, and global myths into a coherent, albeit controversial, picture of a forgotten epoch. Anomalies under the ice. Beyond the ancient maps, speculation about a lost Antarctic civilization is fueled by reports of strange anomalies detected beneath the vast ice sheets using modern technology. While concrete, undisputed evidence of artificial structures remains elusive, various findings have captured the imagination of researchers like Hancock and the public alike. Satellite imagery, for instance, has occasionally revealed features that appear unusually geometric or symmetrical for natural formations. Images from platforms like Google Earth have shown shapes resembling pyramids or organized layouts, though mainstream explanations typically attribute these to wind-sculpted rock formations, nunataks, sastrugi, wind-formed snow features, or even image artifacts. More compelling, perhaps, are findings from ground-penetrating radar, GPR, and airborne radar surveys like those conducted by NASA's Operation Icebridge. These technologies can peer through the ice to map the underlying bedrock topography. While primarily used for geological and glaciological studies, these surveys have sometimes detected features that defy easy natural explanation, large angular shapes or extensive subglacial lakes and channels that hint at a very different past environment. Furthermore, measurements of magnetic anomalies under the ice have occasionally sparked interest. One notable example is the Wilkes-Land gravity anomaly, a massive structure detected via gravitational field measurements, coinciding with a large impact crater beneath the ice. While scientifically attributed to geological density variations, possibly linked to the impact event thought to contribute to the Permian-Triassic extinction, alternative interpretations sometimes speculate about potential artificial origins or connections to unusual energy sources. Hancock and others often compile these disparate findings, the satellite shapes, the radar returns, the magnetic signatures, suggesting that while each individual anomaly might be explainable naturally, the pattern of anomalies warrants further investigation as potential evidence of something non-natural buried deep beneath the ice, remnants preserved by the sudden onset of glaciation following the proposed Younger Dryas cataclysm. The terrifying implications. When Graham Hancock speaks of a terrifying truth hidden in Antarctica, it encompasses several layers of potentially paradigm-shattering implications.
That's what I mean when I talk about an advanced civilization, a civilization that had advanced astronomy, that was able to observe the stars, understand the rising and setting points of stars, navigate using stars.
Firstly, there's the sheer existence of a highly advanced global civilization flourishing during the Ice Age. This directly contradicts the established historical timeline, which portrays our ancestors from that period primarily as scattered hunter-gatherer groups. Discovering sophisticated architecture, technology, or scientific knowledge dating back over 12,800 years would force a complete rewrite of human history and our understanding of societal development. It would mean we are a species with amnesia, having forgotten a significant, possibly glorious chapter of our own past. Secondly, the nature of its demise is inherently terrifying. If Hancock's cataclysm theory is correct, it means that a civilization potentially equal to or even surpassing our own was almost entirely obliterated by a cosmic event, a comet impact, or similar catastrophe. This serves as a stark warning. Our own technologically advanced society is not immune to such existential threats from space or nature. The terrifying truth might be the realization of our profound vulnerability as a species, regardless of our achievements. Could there be warnings embedded within the myths and perhaps even within potential Antarctic ruins? Messages left by the survivors for future civilizations like ours about the cyclical nature of cosmic destruction. Thirdly, the implications extend to the possibility of suppressed knowledge. Hancock often suggests that evidence supporting his theories, particularly concerning Antarctica, may be deliberately ignored, downplayed, or even actively hidden by governments or academic institutions invested in maintaining the current historical narrative. The terrifying aspect here is the idea that powerful entities might be concealing truths fundamental to human identity and destiny. Could the international treaties governing Antarctica, ostensibly for scientific research and environmental protection, also serve to control access and limit discoveries that could overturn established paradigms? The fear isn't just about what happened in the past, but about whether we are being prevented from knowing it now. Ultimately, the terrifying truth is the cumulative weight of these possibilities. A forgotten high civilization, a devastating end that could await us too, and the potential that our true history is being kept from us. Science versus Hancock, the debate. While Graham Hancock weaves a compelling narrative connecting ancient maps, geological anomalies, and global myths to a lost Antarctic civilization wiped out by cataclysm, the mainstream scientific community remains largely unconvinced, raising significant criticisms. Geologists, for example, offer natural explanations for many of the landforms cited as potential structures. Features resembling pyramids are often identified as nunataks, mountain peaks protruding through the ice, shaped by wind and glacial erosion, or distinct geological formations like volcanic cones. The vast timescale of Antarctic glaciation is also a major point of contention.
For a few thousand years, the Ice Age is still very much present. Have big ice caps on North America, big ice caps on Northern Europe, but it's been warming up gradually. And then 12,800 years ago, two things happened at once. First, a sudden cataclysmic drop in climate. It gets incredibly cold, as cold as it was at the peak of the Ice Age more than 20,000 years ago. It gets incredibly cold, but then puzzlingly, there's a release of water into the world ocean.
Geological evidence indicates the continent has been largely ice-covered for millions of years, far longer than Hancock's proposed Ice Age civilization timeline, making the idea of a recently habitable landmass difficult to reconcile with ice core data and geological records. Regarding the ancient maps like the Piri Reis, mainstream cartographic historians argue that the apparent depiction of an ice-free Antarctic coastline is likely a combination of misinterpretation, coincidence, and the incorporation of theoretical landmasses believed to exist for geographical balance, terra australis. They point out numerous inaccuracies on these maps alongside the intriguing elements suggesting they are composites of existing knowledge and speculation, not precise surveys from a lost supercivilization. Archaeologists emphasize the complete lack of concrete, verifiable archaeological evidence, artifacts, tools, inscriptions, confirmed building foundations directly from Antarctica that would support the existence of a complex society there. While acknowledging the difficulty of searching beneath miles of ice, they maintain that extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence which has yet to materialize. Furthermore, dating methods used in mainstream science often conflict with Hancock's timelines, and his interpretations of astronomical alignments or mythological parallels are frequently seen as selective or based on insufficient evidence by specialists in those fields. The core of the debate lies in differing interpretations of evidence and methodologies. Hancock sees interconnected patterns pointing to a hidden history, while mainstream science demands more rigorous, direct and independently verifiable proof before overturning established models of geology and human prehistory. New clues, old mysteries. The quest to understand Antarctica's secrets, both geological and potentially historical, is constantly evolving, driven by technological progress and ongoing research. While no definitive proof of Hancock's lost civilization has emerged, certain advancements keep the possibilities simmering in the public consciousness and provide fertile ground for speculation.
Whereby, from time to time, the entire outer crust of the Earth, like the skin of an orange, might shift, leaving the core of the Earth in place, so that it could so if you imagine a very loose orange skin, the fruit is inside, it's staying in place, but you're shifting the skin around it. Well, obviously then,
improvements in satellite imaging technology offer ever higher resolutions, potentially revealing surface or near-surface features previously undetectable. Similarly, advancements in airborne ice-penetrating radar systems allow for more detailed mapping of the subglacial topography, revealing intricate networks of lakes, rivers, and mountain ranges hidden beneath the ice sheet. While these tools are primarily used for climate science and geology, studying ice dynamics, bedrock composition, and past climate conditions locked in ice cores, each new detailed map of the hidden world beneath the ice inevitably invites scrutiny for any features that appear anomalous or suggestive of non-natural origins. Ice core drilling projects plunging miles deep into the Antarctic ice sheet provide invaluable data about past atmospheric composition, temperature fluctuations, and volcanic activity stretching back hundreds of thousands of years. While these cores strongly support the scientific consensus of long-term glaciation, any unexpected layers or anomalies within them could potentially reignite debate. Furthermore, Graham Hancock himself continues to synthesize information and present his arguments, often incorporating recent scientific findings, even those intended for different purposes, into his narrative framework. For example, research confirming the Younger Dryas impact hypothesis, while still debated, lends credence to his cataclysm theory. Any new geological survey revealing unusual subglacial structures or even theoretical papers discussing the possibility of past ice-free periods in specific regions under certain climate models can be framed as potential support for his overarching thesis. The announcement hinted at in provocative titles might not be a single dramatic discovery, but rather the ongoing integration of new data points, technological capabilities revealing more of the hidden continent, scientific debates lending plausibility to parts of his theories, and his continued articulation of a grand mysterious narrative that keeps the question alive: what really lies beneath the Antarctic ice? A global prehistoric network. Graham Hancock's hypothesis extends far beyond the icy shores of Antarctica. He proposes that the potential lost civilization hinted at by Antarctic anomalies and ancient maps was not isolated but part of a sophisticated, interconnected global network that existed long before conventionally accepted dates for the rise of civilization. He draws parallels between the potential Antarctic remnants and numerous other enigmatic ancient sites scattered across the planet, suggesting they share common origins or influences. Sites like Göbekli Tepe in Turkey, dated to around 11,600 years ago, with its massive, intricately carved megalithic pillars erected by people supposedly still in the hunter-gatherer stage, challenge conventional timelines and demonstrate surprisingly advanced organizational and engineering skills for their era. Hancock posits that such sites could be legacies of his proposed Ice Age civilization, perhaps built by survivors of the Younger Dryas cataclysm attempting to preserve their knowledge.